Previously on the Leaky Bucket podcast.
My why outweighed convenience. So I could, when you have that strong why and you know what it is and you've clarified it in your mind, then you're not derailed by, what the naysayers are saying to you.
Hi there, and welcome to the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'm your host, Ian Morgan, and this is the financial performance podcast for entrepreneurs looking to get a better understanding of their numbers, to plug the leaks in their business, and to move from surviving to thriving. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. Today I've got with us James Bishop, who's the founder of One Fine Play, and he's one of the leading voices in podcasting. And James is a bit of an entrepreneur at heart. Prior to One Fine Play, James founded a bar staff hire agency, Hire the Barman, back in 2009 before he exited in 2014. And then went on and spent, I believe, 12 months making sports documentaries, and also spent 5 years volunteering at Young Enterprise UK, mentoring lots of young people. So, James, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
James, first of all, I was going to say, let's get a bit of a chance for people to know you. What, in your opinion, are you most well known for?
Now, I'm definitely most well known for my podcasting opinions, I guess, and my work within the creator economy, making content from a production side, but also helping to unpack marketing, monetization, and growth of primarily, just by the nature of how podcasting works, individuals, which I guess kind of leads into the personal branding space, which is a word that makes me feel a bit nauseous, but everyone knows what I mean if I say that. And also probably well known in my personal life for having finished the Ironman triathlon 3 times. That would be the probably best, most recognized thing amongst family and friends.
Fantastic.
Not an academic.
No, it's good. I think, yeah. Attempted one triathlon once. I'm not really a swimmer, so it was challenging, to say the least. But
it's not a good start.
No. James, what do people tend to misjudge about you the most?
You see, because I have this fairly brash, direct nature about me, and I seem quite extrovert, and I make a lot of noise, every single day it catches people out, because actually I listen a lot. I'm a big thinker, and I've done a lot of self-development work, been to therapy, have done a lot of thought work around who I am, the space, that I take up, I would like to think fairly conscious, now always learning. So it's that side of me that people just write off instantly because all they see is this facade. Great question, by the way.
Thanks. James, have you got any particular values that are important to you that you live by?
Yeah, loyalty is a hard, if you're not loyal, I'm going to really struggle. There's not one huge thing that leads me to be like that. But I have a very good friend called Chris, for example, who once at the end of a 3-week trip, we were in Las Vegas airport and there was a dispute over the weight of the stuff in the bags. And, that whole nonsense you get into at the airport. And Chris decided he would take sides with the guy behind the check-in desk. And to say that it ended in fireworks is an understatement. I just could not get my head around how he couldn't be on my team in that situation. Because I'm very much I'm going to back you. If I'm going to be loyal to you to the end, whether you're right or wrong. That's just my nature. And I guess that's a two-way street for me. And so, yeah, definitely loyalty. And also another value is just do what you say you're going to do. It's just so much easier in life. I'm not bothered about lying or telling the truth. I'm much more bothered about just do what you say you're going to do. and
Yeah.
communicate it. And life was so much easier then.
Yeah. James, interesting. You're thinking right, loyalty, right? So you're gonna, even if you know somebody's wrong, if they're within your circle, you're gonna be backing them. What
Pretty
do you
much.
then do? Yeah, what do you then do behind the scenes?
Interesting question, but like, you know, like as a business owner, I'm very accepting at this point of most of the stuff. Wrong is a complicated question, right? Because it's always through the lens. It's not a complicated question. Some stuff is really easy to understand, but a lot of it is nuanced, or someone seeing it through a lens at some time, which maybe makes them feel like it was right, you know? So for me, it's often about helping someone understand or unpack, or, you know, not necessarily just make sweeping judgments and try to discover more, because I like to think that people are well intentioned and, you know, have good intention. And so in that moment, they probably thought it was right, or, you know, at least had enough conviction. So for me, I'm always going to stick by them. And, you know, but it's quite strong for me. So even if I think they're in the wrong, or I know they're in the wrong, I'm going to go with it. I guess I've spent a lot of my life being, you know, misunderstood and, you know, things getting lost in translation. And I run a business. I've been self-employed for 14 years or something. Pretty much everything I do every day is going to be wrong, in as much as in a week we're going to redo it, or in a month it's going to get changed, or the process get right. So I know that even if it seems right today, in fact, I've just recently been building a website, and I just get something out because I know that tomorrow we'll go, oh, we can do better than that. So, you know, take the process. And also, like, as soon as you become free of failure, I'm not the first person to say this or the best to speak on it, but like, I just have no issues with failure. And as soon as you free yourself of the stigma or the judgment of others around any of these things, you can just move so much more quickly. I spend my entire time saying to my team, okay, I was wrong about that, but I'm not sorry about it. I just, you know, let's go. It's exactly the same with like business failures, or like, you know, I was saying to someone the other day, I went to university for 4 years, got all the debt, but didn't finish my degree. I spent till the age of 29 pretending to people that I had a degree. I would say, oh yeah, I went to uni, because I did go to uni. It's not a lie, just, you know. And then one day, for reasons I won't go into now, it's just like, this is nonsense. And then I was like, yeah, I don't have a degree. And it was freeing and actually got me so much further. And so, you know, to go back to your question about what do, I always try to understand and unpack, you know, what's going on right after the moment, and, you know, and see if there's any guidance or support or advice or whatever. Because, you know, especially in men, we're a mess, especially our age of man. Like, talking about stuff and telling the truth, it's painful.
Yeah. James, I think I know where you're going to go with this question, but I think it's still going to be interesting anyway, right? Which is, would you rather win with no issues, or would you rather fall short and learn something new?
Win with no issues, or fall short and learn something new? Okay, really awkward question, because it totally depends on the setting. I'm fiercely competitive. If it's sport and my best friend, who I say do all the triathlons with, is there, then I want the win. Like, screw learning anything. But generally in life, I guess it's more about learning. But would I rather, and I've got to really pick one, obviously the second one, because it's far more enriching.
Yeah.
And also, winning is only a thing that you ever invent. Like, it's an invention. You're not actually ever winning anything. You just invent, like, you know, maybe you are if there's a race and there's a prize, but then what does that really mean? You know, you're only as good as the last thing that you... Yeah, I'm really not very good either with... I can't stand it when people tell me I've done well.
Okay.
I've got a friend, and he said, James, you are the very worst person ever at saying thanks, because I'll always give myself a hard time. So winning to me doesn't do a lot, because I'll just be like, yeah, but I could have done this better, or that better, or, well, I've won this, but then that person or that thing or whatever's next. So you knew the answer before you asked the question. you were right.
James, if you're that sort of hard on yourself in terms of like there's always something else that you can improve, or so therefore you're not really winning, how do you not let that not get you down and then show up in you sort of every day?
Mediocrity loves company. And so for me, it's not about winning. It's about not being mediocre. It's about pushing and learning and discovering. And I spent lots of years, like, I alluded earlier to the idea that I'd been to therapy, which I did for like 6 or 7 years. And it comes from a number of things. One is actually accounting based, but another was, I also said that I was misunderstood. And basically what happened was, so many people, I knew this guy once, I worked with him, called Jason. And he said, am I allowed to swear or not swear? We're a non-swearing podcast.
Go for it, James. Go.
He said, I used to work in accountancy recruitment. This was my first job out of the uni that I didn't graduate from. And this guy was called Jason. And I recruited qualified accountants into permanent jobs in and around the Bristol area for a well-known global accountancy recruiter. And he said to me after about 2 years of working together, James, most people pretend to be really nice, but they're actually, and then he used an expletive, you pretend to be an expletive, but you're actually really nice. And this then, at the time, I was like, oh, interesting, but didn't really have the self-awareness to understand what that meant. Over the space of the next 10, 15 years, I would hear time and time and time again, people would go, when I first met you, I thought you were an absolute knob, but actually you're a really nice bloke. And after about 10 years, I was like, this is so irritating. Why does this happen to me? Because I'm not trying to be that, right? Like I approach this with best intention. That, amongst other things, sort of led me down the road of CBT and therapy. And I started unpacking all this stuff, which led me to becoming more aware, which led me to a relationship with to understanding more deeply a relationship to do with things like winning only being, how you perceive it. And I guess because I don't perceive it as this like tick box thing, I feel like I'm on a journey and I'm always learning, I'm always pressing, there's always something new. And, we live in a brave new world where university and school didn't suit me at all, but I've taught myself everything I need to do to run a business and be recognized in my field by watching YouTube videos, right? Like I know things are possible in a different way. So winning just seems like a construct and doesn't really hold my attention. And that's why I'm not bothered by it. And I'm also freed of the judgment of others in many ways. Like I care about what, people think of me in a healthy way. But, if I, like I was saying earlier, I'm not bothered if you judge me for not having a degree. That's on you, not on me. So I'm not going to give that energy. And so the ego and the lots of what's wrapped up in winning or failing, I'm not that bothered about. That's about it, really.
James, would you say, like, look, I know so many business owners, right? And most of them are chasing success, whatever that may mean to them. For you, it sounds like success is more like it's a state of mind and it's a journey and it's the now, if anything.
It's definitely not monetary. It's definitely not particularly philanthropic or cause related either. But I give you an example. I run a podcasting company now. It's basically an education company. I started out running a production company. We built a network of podcasts that got millions of downloads a year and was successful across a range of topics within a pretty short period of time, right? Within like a year or 18 months of coming into podcasting. And I realized that our successes were nowhere near as interesting as what we'd learned along the way. And I also realized about myself that it was much more rewarding and I was much more excited every day by getting up and sharing those learnings that I'd had at the coalface with other people and empowering them to tell greater stories and get greater reach of their show, which would in turn have an impact on other people. And so that was why I realized I was motivated to get up and get out of bed, not make cash. Cash helps, right? But also, like, you know, I don't know if with your mates you talk about, or work related or whatever, but there's you get to a point of financial saturation, don't you? Like when you hit in London, it's about 70, 80K. At that point, once you hit about 70K in earnings, you can live a pretty comfortable life in London. After that, you're just deciding whether you want to go to a posh restaurant or save. And then your motivations for which of you do are based around other life goals that you've probably got that are conditioned from the way you were brought up from your parents, because you're probably, you know, programmed to some blueprint of life. You know, like for me, it was go to decent school, study, go to university, get a sensible professional job with a you know, underpinned by a qualification, get married, buy a house, have kids, right? And I freed myself of that blueprint because I basically fucked most of those things along the way, not intentionally, but then I had to realize that I needed to rebuild that. But yeah, like it's about the journey. I know that sounds so cliched because everyone says that, but you know, when you realize that 70K and 170K doesn't make you any happier than 70, really? I mean, it gives you options and flexibility, and that freedom allows, you know, buys you happiness or perceived happiness or whatever. But like, you know, for me, I'm not in pursuit of happiness. I'm in pursuit of a quiet mind. That's a thing that I became really clear of recently. Like, I'm not in pursuit of, you know, do whatever makes you happy. I also don't believe in work. I don't think that work-life balance exists. I enjoy my work. It's hard. It's got, you know, my dad always says, work is a 4-letter word, which basically means some parts of it are just a grind. When you accept that, you find the enjoyable bits. That therefore is not a pain in the ass. So for me, yeah, I'm not bothered about making money. For me, it's about other stuff.
I think it's a great way of looking at it, James. And actually, like you said, that you're living, if you like, the life that you would like to have, as opposed to maybe what other people think that maybe you should be having. However, it's like, particularly with like social media and everything else that's going on, it's really easy to get caught up in living the life that maybe other people think is a successful life. How do you make sure that you're intentional, that you're living the life that you want?
I don't. I'm really bad at it. I spend quite a lot of time working on that. It's a really great point. A thing that changed. I've got an answer for that. What's his name? Bill Gates talks about having thinking weeks. He documents it in that thing that's on Netflix, and he's spoken about it many times. And after I heard that, I was like, it's so interesting because, you know, they talk about founders, especially like working on their business and not in their business. And there's that management consulting thing of like, what do you do that's red, green, and black being strategy, green being like what you need to do to make money, and red being all the admin and stuff. And, you know, when you start out, you do all green, and then you realize that you should probably do red and black and let someone else do green. And thinking weeks was an idea that I took that allowed me to contemplate all this stuff that you're talking about. Like, how does it become more intentional? So that's the first thing I do. And I don't do thinking weeks, but I do make space. Another thing that I do that was a very intentional move. And this podcast is actually, our recording is an exception. My diary is empty. After Friday, like next week, I have one thing in it for like an hour. That's it. It's empty. I don't take meetings that are more than 7 days in advance, ever. If you wanted to make a booking with me in 2 weeks' time, I'd be like, yeah, call me next week sometime, we'll figure it out. Because then my life is freer to do thinking, to react, to spend time with people. I have a massive bugbear of people who, I have a friend called Tom. You go and meet him. He always has 80% of the amount of time needed for the conversation. He makes you feel at the end like he's got to go. Like he's always going somewhere else. Not, well, if it's an hour and a half, we've got an hour and a half. Or if it's do you know what I mean? Like it bugs me. So I run my diary kind of opposite to other people. I have free space. That gives me time to think. And I think the third thing that I do that makes a big difference is I talk openly about like feelings and experiences and emotions. And, you know, I consciously meet new people and I make space, especially with other, I'm a mid-30s male. I make time to like do that with other people, right? So then I get to hear their thoughts and I get to share stuff and I get to share my own experiences. And that is kind of like a cathartic experience that keeps me on some kind of track. And I feel, again, it links to what we were saying earlier, but I have actually been through a process recently where like, I don't really know what I'm doing or where I'm going. And the more I vocalize and articulate it, and I articulate that lack of any clarity, which sometimes goes on for months on end, that in itself is a kind of clarity. The clarity is I don't have any. And by the way, the comeback on, oh yeah, but you know, I need all these meetings in my diary and I've got to be busy and I've got all these people that ask me for all this stuff. Is like, how do you get anything done? Is idea I stole from someone else, a guy called James Smith, who's a PT. He talks about the idea of the right to relax. So every day I write a list of things, that 2 or 3 things that I need to do that are intentional, that have to get done. And I make the time to do those things first. There might be 1, it might be 2, it might be 3, whatever, it might be 10. And it might be we're buying a house and my wife is saying, James, you need to book a survey. That's my, after I've done that, I can relax today. And I just run a right to relax every day. And it makes it easier. That's how I find balance, as it were, if that existed. And that also means that I don't have to have my diary filled with other people telling me what I'm doing with my time. But I still get everything done.
Right. Do you find that that's more successful than what the 80-90% of people are doing for you?
Yeah. But obviously, you're going against, to a certain extent, you're going against the grain. You have to conform in places. I don't work for a corporate. We have a few big clients. We do lots of work in the US. It's a pain in the neck because we have to do scheduling of, you know, time zones. We have podcast reportings. I like structure. But I think it's more, it's not what I'm doing. It's the fact that the things I'm doing are intentional. And I did 25 other things that all failed before this version. And this is working now. And as I evolve, it might evolve with me. Not it might, it will evolve with me. What do you think? Do you have similar things? What do you do?
Yeah, so interestingly, my role within our organization is conversations with clients about coaching and strategy and direction. So actually my diary is filled up a long time in advance, because I'm that sounding board. And but on the same point, I do reserve time in my diary that's intentional, that's there for me to make the choice of what I want to do. But I was wondering and interesting, going, can that work for me in that way?
Or it's how are you going to make it work? Because I don't like the idea of waking up in the morning and this must happen to you, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do those calls today. Or like, I want to do this thing and I can't do it for a week. Or like I'm impressed. Like, you're making a podcast, which is a fairly creative process, as an accountant, which by nature is not a particularly creative, business. And some days you must wake up thinking, oh, I feel creative today, or I want to make a piece of content. And some days you don't. So I try not to fight that.
Yeah, but I think
I'm also not bound by billing. Like, I'm not bound by I don't have I do, because I have employees and clients that mean I have responsibilities, which I adhere to. But like, it's really funny if you say to someone, the number of times I get an email and they're like, can we book in a meeting? And I just reply, how about now? Or I just phone them. Done.
Yep.
Not, okay, what about next Wednesday at 3? Why are we waiting another 6 days to have a 7-minute phone call?
Yeah, maybe I actually run a bit of a hybrid, I suppose, actually, maybe in terms of what I do. In terms of, in terms of my current role within the organization, I've very much engineered that in terms of I'm spending time doing what I enjoy doing. So lots of strategic planning, conversations, and helping business owners on their sort of pathway towards whatever they deem success. So I'm certainly not going, oh, I don't want to have those conversations. They're very enjoyable and they're good and they make you think. But at the same point, I also build in padding time, if you like, within my diary. So I've got those things. And yeah, I'm a person like you, just go, yeah, I'll just pick up the phone then. Yeah, you've got an email and somebody's going, can we have a conversation about this? And you just go, no. Like, or you get a huge, massive email and I'll just go, I'm not responding to that. I'll just call because I can fix this in 5 minutes as opposed to probably an hour trying to work out how to word it in the best way that it's understood.
I think a lot of it depends on the pressures that you have on yourself, the framework that you're working within, the kind of personality or type of person you are. Like, I'm a fairly spontaneous person. I don't think as much as I'm a thinker, in general, I'm also, like, I back myself hard. So I will trust my instinct. So if we were to go on, I don't know, we go skiing and you're like, okay, who's the first person to go down the slope? I'll probably be the first person because I probably irrationally back myself. And so, there's a guy called Lewis Howes. He runs a thing called the School of Greatness. He talks about how he schedules every minute of every day, including fun. So he will schedule 40 minutes of table tennis time with the team at 1 p.m. But that doesn't really work for me because I hate the idea. I hate organized fun, like parties and surprise parties and just general stuff. Anything that you understand what I mean by organized fun, like team building events, that stuff, like that sets my social anxiety off hard. So anything that appears to be organized fun is my idea of absolute hell. So it doesn't work for me. So don't do that. But it absolutely works for him.
Yeah, I suppose
just
it's about
just thinking about organized fun makes me feel stressed.
I suppose it's about recognizing what works for you and then being intentional about what works for you.
Or at least being aware that you're not being intentional, one or the other.
Well, yeah, and then do something about it, maybe. Yeah. James, I'm intrigued in terms of you had a previous business then that you grew and you exited. I want to delve into a little bit, but I also want to go, did you run that in that same manner, or are these new skills that you're doing and using to now get control in terms of now how you live your life with your current setup and how that's happening?
Yes, let's call it what should we call it? Awakening, self-awareness, any of the stuff we've just talked about, it all came towards the very end and after the exit of that first business.
Okay. Was it an intentional exit, or?
By the revenue, it was probably an intentional exit, not by me. Yes, that's a joke. It was, I'd had enough, for sure.
Okay.
I definitely had enough. I don't want to go into my entire life story, but it was time to do something else. Okay.
What were your biggest learnings from that?
What from that business or that exit, or let me give you a plotted history because it'll make it easier.
Okay.
So worked in recruitment in Bristol, like I explained. It was 2008. There was the Lehman Brothers credit crunch. You know the story. I was recruiting qualified accountants, primarily into financial services. That's not a pretty place to be during a recession. I was 24 years old, and I thought, I'm going to go to the big smoke. You've got to remember, I'm old. I don't know how old you are. I'm 39, but this is pre-Facebook, pre-social media. It's the sort of dawn of that era, right? But it definitely wasn't like an active thing. my friend at the time in Bristol ran a bartender hire company, literally just hiring bartenders to events, to private parties. And I'd worked in cocktail bars at university rather than going to university. I've told you that part of the story. And I just built I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, right, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to do bartender hire in London. I knew one bartender. I created my own website, like complete through naivety, just copied this person's business, literally had done some jobs for them, literally just copied it, but did it in London. And I was like, okay, I don't need to work for a bit because I'd had some healthy bonuses at the end of my recruitment job. I had about £30,000 to keep me going. I was like, I'm going to do this for 6 months and this is how naive I was. I literally remember saying this to like my mum and my girlfriend at the time. Like, I'm just going to prove I can run a business. And I never even considered that after 6 months, I might have clients. So I get to the 6 month point. It's all going all right. I've basically just, my idea of business at this point, you've got to remember, this is also like pre-fundraising era and all that kind of stuff. Well, as it is today, I got to 6 months. I was like, oh, I'll do another 6 months. By that point, that scaled up. And I met someone which opened up opportunities to run cocktail bars at festivals, which was a bit of a niche. But I knew how to make a mojito, and I also knew how to make 10,000 mojitos under pressure in a field, because I could use my common sense to figure it out. And I wasn't the conscious version of James that I am today. So, a bit of this, bit of that, it kind of suited me quite well. So I grew the business to 10 people. That first opportunity that came to me after a year, my friend John, who still came to my wedding 3 months ago, he got me that first festival opportunity that introduced me to brands. And there was where I met my now best friend Lee, who I've done Ironman with, and I was best man. He was best man at my wedding, and I'm best man at his wedding. So, it was really just like vocational, no boundaries, employed my friends, and employed a random guy I met on Gumtree who was trying to sell me something. And we got to talking, and I was like, do you want a job? And then stayed with me for 5 years. Didn't understand anything about business, hadn't done a business GCSE or A-level, had no qualifications, just guessed. In my first 2 months, this is how much I didn't know and how different it was. In like my second month of running the business, as it were, I went on a 5-day course run by the local council in like one of the North London boroughs. And I sat in a room with some other people and went to how to run a business classes, which would be laughed at now, right? But literally did that. The very first job I ever did, a woman rang me. I was Googling it. It was a different era whilst talking to her. And then I met her and collected £150 in cash. And I went and met the bartender and gave him 80, and I had 70 in my hand. That's like how basic it was. I then scaled this quite fast into festivals. The festival world is, let's just say, it's murky. There's lots of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds an event, and the festival world is a closed shop. So if you make one festival, you get to speak to people, then you get to the next one, and then the brands say, could you go to this one? And it's like a trusted network of people. I had no idea what I was doing. I had cash under the washing machine, and we didn't pay tax, and I had no idea that it never occurred to me. No one ever told me, if you don't put this revenue through the business and pay tax on it, then when you come to sell the business, because it looks like it never happened, there's no value in any of this. Like every naivety you can ever imagine, borrowing from Peter to PayPal, like literally every mistake you could make. And, was on flat rate VAT, which was a disaster, and had no proper financial planning. And then it got to the point where I was spending, I had a team of 10 people working flat out, event planners, office managers, an office that had a warehouse manager. And basically, I got to the point that PAYE and VAT, of which I owed, which now seems funny to me, but I owed like £40,000, which at the time seemed like loads. And obviously isn't really that much money in the scheme of things. That felt like it was closing in, and I didn't really understand and didn't know what to do. And I was just in like his cash flow, never ending cash flow business. And I had a contract with the O2 Arena in Greenwich, and it was 270-day payment terms. as well, which was factored, and just, it was all too much. And I was just fed up with, an unreliable business. It's nights. I don't stay up past 9:30 at night if I can avoid it. It's alcohol. I don't drink, maybe like a couple of beers a year. You're working with a product that can be unreliable, that can drink alcohol, that's riddled with challenges. It's weeks away at festivals. I'd had enough. Someone said, I'll buy that from you, because it had quite a lot of momentum. I was like, yes, thanks, bye. But an absolute pickle. So actually what happened was the business got liquidated and someone bought the assets out the back.
Okay. From there, you go off, and you go and do this 12 months doing filmmaking, yeah? Well,
So what happened from that was like, I think I was quite scared by how it had got so fast, but like, it was a different era. I spent £250 a month on Google AdWords, and it was making me 50 grand a month in revenue. Like, it was nuts. The world doesn't exist anymore. I was like, I need to learn some skills. Like, I need to learn how to cut the background of an image, or how do I edit a video, or I need to learn more about accounts, so like stuff. And I had no idea of what I was going to do. So I just started watching. I started teaching myself, and I taught myself by watching YouTube, but I had no idea what YouTube was. And then basically I didn't need to work because I had some money from selling the business, and I just watched YouTube for like a year and a half. And I learned a lot. And then that led me to, I lived in central London, and basically I'd got fat from working in an office for 10 years. I was like, I need to get fit. So I entered an Ironman triathlon, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, is a 3.8 kilometer swim followed by a 180 kilometer bike ride followed by a marathon, and you need to get all that done in 16 hours. It's quite a tall order. I was like, I need a job that involves cycling or exercise of some form. In a roundabout way, I ended up getting a job working at a TV production company that made sports documentaries. And that opened my eyes, alongside having watched YouTube for a year, to the creative industries.
When you then got to the point where you decided to launch business again, how did you overcome the fears of would history repeat itself?
Yeah, so a lot happened in that gap. So between 2015, when I sold that business, or end of 2014 when I sold that business, and like 2018, 2019, that's when I was, what had happened is I'd had a business coach in my first business, because I naively thought that would solve all my problems. And I got to the point one day, I was sitting with her. Her name was Liz. She was lovely. I had no self-awareness. I was, you can already tell from this call how obnoxious I am. I was, my very oldest friend, Dean, says, if you think he's bad now, imagine what he was like when he was 19. Like, I said to her, why do I leave my VAT returns till after they're done, after they need to be submitted, to even consider doing them? Or on the day? Like, why am I doing that? She's like, I don't know. You need to go and get, you need to understand you. The only way, all these problems I was presenting to her, she was like, that's not a business thing, that's a you thing. And that was when she said, maybe you need to, and I was like, how do I do that?
Hey there, really sorry for interrupting, but I really wanted to let you know about some amazing bonus content we have available for you. You see, not only do we record behind the scenes, but also we go deeper into some of the key topics that come up during the conversation. Now, you can find out more about this and access all of it free of charge over on Facebook. Just search for the Leaky Bucket Podcast Community.
She went, well, you get business coaching for yourself, which is, and I'm someone who likes to do, I told you, mediocrity loves company. I will avoid it. So I was like, the easy version of that is probably some kind of like counseling. So I was like, cool, what's the toughest version of therapy I can find that's really uncomfortable? Let me go do that, because that's how I'm going to learn the most. So I was doing that whilst watching YouTube, whilst dating someone who worked in PR, whilst the world was evolving with like Facebook and Instagram and moving to video and away from traditional comms and the rise of the social influencer. And the Gary Vaynerchuk and all this content online and storytelling, and then working, teaching myself to edit videos, and, making my first YouTube content and whatever. It was a really long journey of learning all this stuff. And that was when, then suddenly people talking about accelerators and, how do you raise money and what's, shareholding and all this stuff that I'd had no idea about. So by the time it came to my second business, I was in a completely different headspace. I approached it with like it was a completely different thing. I explained my first business as just like a vocational degree, really. I'm not joking. When I say there was washing, I used to keep money under the washing machine. That's not a joke. I would have 20,000, 30,000 pounds in cash under the washing machine, and that's how I'd pay my rent for a year. I would just, every month, I would go and get 2,000 pounds in cash and pay it in the bank. And I realized that wasn't a viable way forward. So I wasn't about being scared. It was about just, I'd learned a lot in that period.
During those times, did you have nobody around you? I know, obviously, you mentioned the business coach and that, but did you have nobody around you to sort of go, James, what are you doing? This isn't how it's done.
What, in the first business?
Yeah.
It was I suppose they were probably there, but take into account the fact I had no ability to listen. Like, it's not that I didn't want to listen. I probably thought I was listening. I just wasn't actually listening. With the fact that just the way festival world works, like, you back then, it's still the same today. So what my legacy when I sold the business is that I kept my relationship with Glastonbury Festival, which is a big festival in the UK. And so I still have done that every year since, as a one-off. Every year go and run a cocktail bar at Glastonbury, which I pay for and own, and it's a great opportunity, and it's lucrative. And that during the fallow years in between business one and business two, a lot of my lifestyle was paid for by my 1 week a year at Glastonbury. There's a lot of cash, and it was a way of negating risk. So whatever you said to me, I would be like, yeah, but cash is cash, and I'm getting it. I'm not doing anything. Like, it's part of the job is to get this cash. And if it rains or it's a washout, like, if you go to 25 festivals, you see 25 different sets of results, and you realize, like, it's an entire science, right? So I can give you a summary of how it works. If you put in 50k, you can probably make, give or take, this is having done maybe like 40 or 50 festivals in total and seen the cocktail bar operations. First of all, bars don't make as much money as you think by any means. Secondly, however much you put in is basically a stake of how much you're willing to make or how much you're willing to lose. So if you stake 10k up front, you can probably make about 10k, but you could probably lose about 10k, give or take. So the higher the stakes, right? And I got into playing big stakes, like, let's put in 130, 150k to do this bar operation. We might win that, we might lose that. And so then everything in the middle just became about de-risking. So in your answer to, like, did I have support? Survival overrode, you were saying earlier on in the conversation, it might have been just before we started recording, about, like, do you run your business through survival or, like, conscious, proper decision making? And that was a survival business, so it worked.
In terms of then the new business and how that's then working, is it almost a question of you're just doing the opposite of what you did previously, or are you consciously sort of analyzing each decision and looking at what you did previously, how you learned, and how you're moving forward in the right direction? And
no, I've made loads of the same mistakes again, which is super frustrating. I've started a business, like, this business journey has been tricky, right? Like, I did a lot of freelance stuff, low risk, just essentially what you call it, like sole trader type stuff to start with, and built a network of people. But then we opened an office in the middle of London, which I turned into a podcast studio in 9 months before the pandemic started, a year before the pandemic started. And we spent a year grinding, getting clients, building product, getting it moving. And we had that to the point it was a healthy little 1, 2-man, 3-man business. And then overnight, there was no one going in the studio. And I was like, this is spicy. Where are we? Right. Wiggled my way out of that. And then had to figure out from there, realized that fundraising and winning people over is probably not my having shareholders and investors and all that kind of stuff. I've spent a lot of time in that space, but I've always bootstrapped. Bootstrap comes with risk. I've made silly, the revenue make it too easy for you to not pay them. That's for sure. And I've got a bit caught up in that. But I've learned, I guess I've got caught up and then I've gone, oh, bollocks, don't do that, and stopped it. It's hard. Like, it's just hard. That's the... you ask, I think in and around what you're saying is one of my bugbears. A thing I've never found, not through lack of trying, which is I'm a sole founder. One thing that I did badly was at the end of my first business, I said, I'm never going to sole found again. Being a sole founder is dog shit. And now I'm doing it again for a second time. Not intentional. I think it's apropos of my personality, like, because I'm obviously you can tell the way I am. But that's one of the things that I've done again. It's like I've never actually found a good partner. And that's actually you asked earlier on about reflecting and thinking. And one of the things I am doing now is we're making a conscious evolution of how we do things moving into 2023 for reasons I can tell you about in a minute if you want. But it's, so sole founding for the second time was not a great move. And but had to be done, and I've made some of the same mistakes, and I have bootstrapped because it kind of suits me. And I just find the whole... Oh yeah, I was going to say, here's a thing that's missing, especially if you're a sole founder, is an impartial support network that act in the things that you really need, that is actually useful, right? So everyone has an ulterior motive, which is understandable. You pay for support. They just want their money. Like, so many people, like, okay, yeah, do you want to consult? Yeah, cool. Like, non-execs, okay, give me a fee. How much can I do? Finding the right non-exec is difficult. Finding a coach, yeah, cool. But you also know they're just going, yeah, it's an hour. That's 200 quid. Yeah, tell him what I need to know. Go, right? Like, it's a really difficult thing. And that it's not the loneliness, the thing that everyone talks about, the reason it's difficult. That you end up making mistakes because there is nobody that you can really get to that's going to help you to not make them. Because no one really, in the spaces around business decisions, you want to talk to someone about climate change or activism or whatever it is, they'll give you all their time for free as much as you want and tell you everything they know. Right? You've got mental health problems and you need help. My wife's a doctor. You need medical help. All the help and support completely with the absolute best will, free as much of it as you need. I don't know what to do about my business moving forward. How do I structure my share? I've got this literal problem right now. I've got 3 shareholders, small shareholders. How do I restructure my business so this makes the most sense without it being a nightmare? I've only got me to ask. Nobody else will give you a straight answer without either charging you 350 quid, which is just not worth it, or actually caring, or actually knows what the fuck they're talking about. So you just guess, and therefore you make mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah. True that.
I think it is. It's a common thing. Yeah. We are all, in some respects, we're all winging it, because just because one thing worked for somebody else does not mean it will work for you. And actually, in a lot of these areas, they're like, using the shareholder example, right? It seems easy, but actually it's complex in some respects, because actually there's multiple people involved. There's multiple different outcomes that you could want or not want. And therefore, yeah, it becomes hard, because actually you could ask that same question to multiple different people and get multiple different answers, and they can all be right.
Mm-hmm.
They can also all be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, definitely. So I talk about this thing, which is the closest I've got to, which is I have friends who are business owners, because they, you have a natural affinity to that kind of thing. And so I've developed a couple of people who I call faux founders. And I faux founder for someone else, as in FAUX.
Yep.
because they're like the co-founder. They're obviously then like the fake co-founder, right? So they have some context and they know you, like they know your personality and they know you, and they, you know, you kind of do a trade. We actually got to the point where we were like, we should start this as like a enterprise, like a thing, like people co-founder for each other, like a mentoring scheme. It's quite a good idea because it works really well. That's the closest way I found of solving the problem for exactly the reason that you say, is like you need context. And that's what I always find fascinating is I do lots of consulting work on podcasting, right? Like, you know, you're the exact person, right? I've made 20 episodes of my show. I'm getting 72 listens an episode. How do I get to 7,000 or 700? What do I do? What are the next steps? I want to take this on. And we get into the context, right? Like I can't tell you the answer till I know all the detail. I always find people just go, I tell them my problem. They go, oh, yeah, just do this. You're like,
Yeah.
All right, fuck face. But like, thanks for wasting 15 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just ranting to you and you now about like one of life's mysteries.
I think it's very. I think when people ask a question, it's easy to think that actually the best way is to give an answer, but sometimes actually you need more questions, because it's not that simple.
It's like the failing thing, right? Like people are so obsessed with I'm so comfortable because I find it easier with just saying I don't know. But most people are programmed to give you an answer when the answer should really be I don't know.
Yeah.
Because people ask me stuff all the time, to which I have to say, oh no, what should I do? Someone said that I had a call at 9:00 this morning. Guy's got 500,000 Instagram followers. What should I do about my Instagram for the next 3 months? I don't know. Because I don't know. That's his livelihood. I'm not telling him an answer. I don't know. But the instinct is to guess, right? The instinct is to go, oh, well, you should start a TikTok because Instagram reaches down and people are leaving it in its droves because they're going elsewhere because they changed the algorithm because it's video first and it used to be photo first. And so you go to TikTok because that works on an interest graph. But you're like, I don't know, mate. I don't know. Because I need to ask you about 150 other questions to figure out the answer. And one of the things that I find in accounting is that, and other professions, is that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. There's a lot of, let's just give an answer, try and fit everybody in a box and go, well, if you all did this is my default stock answer. So somebody's got a shareholder problem, right? Boom, this is the answer. And understand the real question, because the real question isn't how should I set up my shares for my shareholders. Actually, there's a deeper question behind that.
And that's completely, like when you say I want to grow my podcast, my question is always why? Yeah. Why? What are we trying to achieve? Anyway, we didn't get onto this to rant about what's missing.
We didn't.
What's missing in the support space.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, James, in terms of like how you guys go and support podcasters in terms of their, or it's creative industry in terms of then channels and things. Has there ever been sort of a surprise outcome that's happened that you weren't expecting?
In what? I mean, in respect to what? Sorry. In
respect, I suppose, of the training and the coaching and that you guys are delivering. Has it ever gone down? Yeah, just ended up with a completely random outcome that you just thought, wow, I wasn't expecting that to go that way.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Like on the daily. Like I think that's one of the things that, we were just talking about how the professions like to go, yeah, here's my stock answer, because that's like my wife and I, for example, we find it tricky navigating certain things in life because we're very different, because she's a cancer surgeon. So today she will have been in theatre cutting people open and cutting cancer out of them. There's a very clear set of rules that say do this and don't do this. Like definitely don't cut through that one and definitely do cut through that bit, right? Based on a set of rules that people have figured out and have been handed down and you learn how to do. So there's a right and a wrong answer. And so when it came to planning, whereas in my world, it's my day is spent, right, I want to grow my podcast. What could I do? Well, there's an infinite number of creative answers. So when we come together to like plan a wedding, she shall we have it in the south? Shall we have it abroad? And I go, well, let's rule that out for now. So I'll say no. Okay, what about Scotland? Okay, that's interesting. And then when there's nothing in Scotland, I go, well, what about the south? What about France? And then she goes mad because she's like, but we said no to that. Because in her world, when you cut the patient open on the table, you do the things. And when you say, no, we're not going to do that, or no, you definitely haven't got this illness, that's fact. Whereas in my world, it's not like that. So I find surprising results all the time. The reason I love my job, and I find this fascinating in other people, and why I find it fascinating that other people are not willing to share more, is I'm willing to tell, and this is why I find working with lawyers particularly difficult. I'm willing to tell everyone everything I know all the time for free. For two reasons, primarily. Number one, I know that 99.9% of people aren't going to do any of it anyway. And if they are, and they're more likely to come back to you and say, I need help, they're more likely to go, yeah, I get that. Will you help me with it? Than they are do it themselves. Number two, I learn so much that makes me better at my job and evolves and is in education. Like, if I talk to you for half an hour, you'll get 51% value, but I'll get 49% value back. You think you got 100, but actually I took so much from that conversation, even just by, like reactions to stuff. So an example of this on LinkedIn. I'm quite fairly active on LinkedIn in as much as I post every few days, where most people don't. Most of what I write is just contentious nonsense because I want to see what people will. I'll think of a thing. I'll have a theory. Something will have happened today that got me thinking, and I'll turn that into a post when I'm on the toilet later, and I'll post it. And it'll just be a test. I probably don't agree with it. I maybe completely disagree with it, and I want to see how it sits in the cultural zeitgeist today. And I learn from that. And so that's why I'm willing to, to give stuff up. So I'm learning all the time and I get surprising results all the time. The problem in my job is there's too many exceptions to the rule. I can tell you what to do and you'll go, yeah, but Joe Rogan, blah, 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 blah. I go, yeah, cool, but he's an exception to the rule. And then you'll think of another famous person and I'll go, yeah, exception to the rule.
Yep.
And we create exceptions to the rule all the time in our own work by accident.
Yes.
You probably don't have probably don't have that experience in accounting. You do the numbers and they come out where you expect them to come out.
Yeah, but interestingly, like 90% of my day is not about numbers. It's about strategic thinking and working out what it is that what does business mean to you as a person? What are you really trying to achieve? And there's a balance. Sometimes there's numbers involved, i.e. there might be a certain level of earnings that wants to be achieved, but actually there's a balance in terms of the hours that you want to be working. And is the work that you're doing work that you enjoy? And so there's a lot more feeling, I suppose, around some of the stuff that's being done and emotion, as opposed to, this is just logical, just the numbers. But we do bring it back to logic and we do bring it back to rules and we do bring it back to, if this happens, then this is the result out of it.
And I would guess, based on the little that I know about what you do, we actually probably could sit and have a beer or a coffee and share lots of exactly the same stories, there are so many predictabilities and cliches in answers. And it's, you ask people what they want to do or why they want to do. And the reality is most of them don't know. And a lot of it comes back to like, well, you need to do work on yourself. Like, who are you? What, self-development, self-awareness, what's important to you? What's the purposeful work that you're doing? Why is this, a question I ask people a lot, like I would ask this to you, like, this podcast, why does it matter?
Yeah.
Like, not what's it about? Like, why does it matter? What difference how are you making an impact to society through making this content?
Yeah.
And that's the North Star. And then everything connects around that North Star. So now when tomorrow you have a complete introvert that works in a completely different industry on the show, the listener will start to get a sense. Our conversations will be completely different and our styles will be different, but the conversations will be connected through this purposeful North Star. Right? And, you learn, I'm sure we have similar thoughts around talking to people about like what you asked me early on in this conversation was fascinating to me around intention, really unexpected, because most of what's going on is so unintentional, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Yeah, to go. Why are we doing the podcast? And it's not, the driver isn't monetary. Yeah, it's actually no. There is a driver that's monetary. The driver that's monetary is actually, there's a frustration when I learnt a fact that the average business owner only makes £8,000 per year in the UK. I was like,
that much?
Yeah, yeah. And then actually, that's when you consider the average hours they're probably putting in. It's massively below minimum wage, and there's a lot of risk and no reward. But there's the balance to go. There is potential for reward. So how do we help in terms of spreading that knowledge and information to help people together?
So this has been the biggest revelation for me in recent months. You said earlier on about like intention and how do you keep track of what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. It's been 14 years and I've spent, built a business that had 10 employees, turned over £1 million, most of which was cash under the washing machine. And, now I've built this business and, doing whatever. And we've built a tech product in the last couple of years because I thought that would be fun to try and do. And, there is a lot of sacrifice in working 60 hours and you do earn $8,000 a year if you're lucky. And I also realized I have all these skills and this whole thing is ridiculous because I was late on our call because I came off a call with a guy who basically wants to build like the next Facebook. And he's like, yeah, but if I do this and this and I raise money from this and this and these people believe in me and this VC, blah, 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 blah. Like, mate, it's about, it's ridiculous. Like, it's never going to happen. Like, whatever. And I sort of had this realization of like, I work so hard for the business and I have no control over the business. Like, I have all the control over the business, but I have no real guarantee of its outcome. And for the first time ever, it's been 14 years and I'm still poor and I still don't feel fulfilled. I'm going to do things completely differently. Like, screw what anyone thinks. Screw all the judgment. I'm not going to raise money, which is most people's solution. Like, you hear this all the time, I'd imagine. And I hear this about podcasting. When you hear about podcasts, first people go, you're going to get a sponsor. What? And it's exactly the same. Like, oh, you want to do business. I'm going to raise some money. I'm going to get investors. All right, cool. And then it's all about how much have you raised and how many employees have you got? And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the opposite. My aim now is to make my business work for me. So I'm going to do the opposite of what everyone else said. I'm going to put myself in for a 50 grand salary. I'm going to rebuild the whole business. I'm going to pay myself 50k next year. Seems reasonable. At 39 years old, it's not very much money, I don't think, in central London, 2022, in the Western world, realistically. As someone who works 60 hours a week. And then I'm going to cost everything else in the business after that based on what I need to deliver some work. And if I can't afford it, it's getting cut. But the business has to work for me. And if it means I work on my own as a one-man band and I build the one-man $1 million turnover business or whatever, I don't care because that seems more fulfilling to me. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going the complete opposite way. And I'm going, everything I do, all my work, all my business has to serve me first. Because otherwise, I'm going to work 60 hours a week, and at the end of this, I'm going to be left with nothing.
I think it's great, James. I think so many people, start a business with this great intention of the life they're going to live, and the business itself consumes them, and that ideology just gets lost and disappears, and just living for the sake of living, just an existence. And I think it's great in terms of actually you have been intentional in terms of then what you've done and changed to.
So I've got a question. So I've got a question for you. I can see you watching the clock. I've got a question for you. I agree about that. You're completely right, and I agree with you. Like, classic. How does this business end? I speak to my friends like, I'm going to sell it or I'm going to whatever. There's a whole different conversation around that's changed everything. And I go for breakfast with my, one of the things I like to do is try and meet other men of a similar age for breakfast and talk to them about their feelings and what they're going through. And, I know so many people at the moment, not all employed, some employees too, going through a bit of a post-COVID midlife crisis. Like, what do I do? What am I going to do? To the point that in January, I've booked a villa in Mallorca that sleeps 10 people. And it took me about an hour and a half to convince 9 other people to come with me. And we're going for a week to get together, do some exercise, meet some other like-minded people because everyone's stuck working from home. And you'll do a bit of work, bit of exercise, bit of meeting, bit of chatting. And it's going to be we're taking Love Island rules. So no more than 2 beers a day. And you've got to talk about like feelings and be open about sharing about, to improve yourself, which is essentially the premise of Love Island. And I couldn't believe the take up on it. And, one of the things that all these people say, or the classic question is, how are you going to get out of your business? How does this end? And people are now saying, well, post-COVID, I don't think anyone is going to buy it. And I don't even know if I want to sell it. And it's been so hard to get into this point. Like, I'm not sure, who, what, why. It changes everything. And a really interesting way that I came to understand this was content. And this is my question to you. You started a podcast, right? And I imagine you started with your podcast with intention. And I know nothing about it, so I won't dive into it. How does your podcast end? What's the exit strategy? Or were you one of those mugs who said, oh yeah, I'm just going to start a podcast and we'll just keep going. I don't know how it ends. I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing it forever. Like, if you sat home, if you drop this call and you sit there with a bit of paper and you go, okay, yeah, good point. How does this end? When you wake up tomorrow, your podcasting will be significantly more intentional.
It's a great question because actually it's one that I've not asked myself, and embarrassingly so, actually, because one of the first questions we ask business owners is, okay, what's the exit plan? Where are you going? What are you trying to achieve?
Please don't be embarrassed, because I think I've asked this question to maybe, 150 people this year, and about 2 have an answer.
Yeah.
But it would change everything if you knew how it ended. Do you know why? The main reason is you would then be going on a journey to that exit. Whatever that exit is, you would be going on a journey to that exit. And as soon as you do that, you will unintentionally, subconsciously, start telling a story of that journey, and the listeners will come on that journey with you. And as soon as I don't know this, but I can just punt. What you currently do is essentially have one night stands with your listeners. So like, I'm on this episode, and then tomorrow Jane will be on, and the day after that Steve will be on. And there's no correlation between the episodes. You're not taking the listener. At the end of this episode, you are not going to say, I guarantee, you're not going to go, thanks for listening, guys. James has been great today. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, I've got Lucy, and we're going to be talking about this. And if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, I was talking to Steve about that. And I think it's really interesting that Steve said that and James said this. So I wonder whether Lucy's going to say this. And so come back tomorrow to find out. Right, which is not rocket science, because you've also got Netflix, and every fucking Netflix episode goes previously on. The recap is, and then, right? Yeah, because they want you to go from episode to episode. They end on cliffhangers. Everyone has that experience of you're like halfway through an episode. It's 9:45. You're halfway through the episode, and you're like, oh my God, I want to go to bed. Hurry up! And then you find yourself 9 minutes later going, oh my God, should we watch one more? Right, but you don't do that in your content, because you haven't decided on an exit point. And if you decide on an exit point and you track back, you will naturally then take people on that journey. And then you will bring more value to more people through your content, because they will be bought into what you're doing.
Brilliant. James,
no idea how we got onto this.
No, but it's a great segue into a point of going, James, where do people find out more about what you do in terms of your podcast sort of promotional side of things and all of that?
I've made it easy recently. You go to jamesbishop.io and you can find everything there.
Fantastic. James, I've got a bit of a... Go on, sorry.
No, go on, you go.
I was going to go to a bit of a closing question, so if you've got some comment or remark, then yeah, go on, fire.
No, you go for it. You go for it.
I feel like you potentially alluded to this earlier, right, already, but I'm going to see if maybe that comes back up. In terms of, if you had to start a new business tomorrow, completely unrelated to what you currently do, what would that business be and why?
That's a great question to which I don't have a straight answer, but I can tell you this. If I was to start another venture tomorrow, all I would do is make a bucket load of content as aggressively as possible for as long as it took to figure out what that community of people wanted, what problems they had, and I had their attention. Because all I meet in life is people who've started businesses in one way or another, whether they are a big company or they're a small company or they're an individual, and they've started this thing, and now they basically need to get attention of people to sell that thing, said thing to them, right? And it's so stereotypical to go, okay, let's raise some money, let's build a bit of tech, let's hire developers, let's do all this stuff, let's have a conversation. And then they go, oh, marketing. Oh, we should make some content. Oh, we need some people. We need an audience, right? And then that takes 3 or 4 years. Like I would just community build, whatever it was, and I don't know what it is. I'm fascinated in Web3, but I think it's a bit early. I would love to try manufacturing because I've never tried it. It's just a personal fascination. I don't know what it would be. I can tell you is I would do literally zero apart from make content, and I would make making content my full-time job, and I would monetize that, and I would build a community of people, and I would spend all day, every day making content for them, solving their problems, bringing them to one shared place, be that a circle community or a Discord or a Telegram group, some form of dark social. And then ideas would come from there.
Like it. Yeah, like an alternative view. Not where I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to go down the faux finder route.
That's a great idea, isn't it? Great business idea. Oh, no, I also think that that thing I'm doing in January, the cabin, the villa in Mallorca, I think that is another, I mean, well, just sharing my idea with the whole world, but that, whether it's, I think there's like business travel, getting people together, whoever they are, because this working from home thing is soul destroying. I think that's a short-term hot potato.
Yep. No,
but the faux founder thing, I'm glad you like it. I don't think it's a business. I think it works by being free.
Maybe.
But even if I was doing that, I'd still build the community for a year first before I did anything.
Yep. No, it's been enlightening, James. It's been good and it's been refreshing. You give them a very, I think, alternative and different view to the majority of people, which I think is refreshing because, like who wants to be the same and blend in? Everybody wants to stand out, and be remembered.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Yeah.
It's so definitely been a pleasure, James. And
thank you. Thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed chatting to you. Hopefully there's some value in that.
Yep, fantastic. It's been brilliant.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'd love it if you could help spread the message by clicking subscribe and leaving a review. Also, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can also find more info and links in the show notes below. See you next time. Coming next week on the Leaky Bucket podcast.
What the title of the book is The Art of Preventing. And you know as well as I do that entrepreneurs, they have a lot of swagger to them. They all think they're 13 feet tall and bulletproof. And I'm trying to provoke them to go, okay, guys, let's slow down. Let's not worry about strategic planning for just a few seconds here. Let's quit making stupid mistakes. So I'm intentionally trying to provoke them, kind of, not really insult them, but make them think, hey, okay, let's prevent some stupid errors. Let's prevent the unforced errors. And one of the taglines I use all the time is, let's deal with your vulnerabilities so you can capitalize on your opportunities.
Brilliant. Interestingly, I have something very similar that I talk to people about. I talk about business owners. They need an ego to get started because every business owner thinks that they are better than everybody else doing what they do, and probably people not doing opposite of what they do. But there becomes a point then to hit the next level that somehow you have to be able to lower the amount that ego comes through, particularly when you're trying to engage staff. You can't hire great staff and then have an ego that you think you're always better than them.
Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to be able to see them and recognize when they're better than you, and let them be free to do what they're good at doing.
Yeah, there's so much truth in that. I get it.